Hey guys, tonight we're trading the comfort of air conditioning and Wi-Fi for hot sand and even hotter problems as we journey deep into the desert kingdoms of medieval Arabia. That's right, no magic carpets, no luxury tents, just relentless sun, sand in places sand should never be, and a to-do list that makes modern life look like a vacation. So before the mirage sets in, remember to hit like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy these little bedtime trips through the historical, absurd. Leave a comment to let me know where you're listening from and just how many cushions you're currently hiding behind. Bonus points if you're not covered in sweat. Now, dim your lights, put on a fan for that fake desert breeze, and slide into your sheets. Pretend they're goat hair if you want the full experience. Before we set up our date with dehydration, let's get curious. How do you build a home with nothing but sand and hope? What did dinner look like without takeout or refrigeration? Did people actually ride camels everywhere? Or is that just tourist propaganda? How do you bathe with no water and clothes made from what you can find? Were sandstorms just a free exfoliation treatment? How did you handle neighbours when there weren't any, except maybe a scorpion named Larry? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in the heart of a medieval Arabian desert. It's dawn, it's dusty, and the nearest Starbucks is about 1,500 years in the wrong direction. Good luck. The sun isn't so much rising as it is attacking the horizon. You wake up tangled in a scratchy woolen blanket, the sort that doubles as both blanket and hand towel, with the aroma of warm goat drifting in. Every surface inside your tent is covered in a film of sand so fine, it's practically a seasoning. If you listen closely, you can hear your water skin judging you from across the room. This is not the gentle, buttery sunrise you've seen in postcards or travel documentaries. Here, every ray of sun feels purposeful and personal, as if it's on a mission to remind you that the desert makes no room for hesitation, not even at dawn. The light cuts through the coarse flap of your tent, drawing patterns on the floor that resemble the bars of a cage. It's the sort of morning that doesn't ask if you want to get up, but simply doesn't give you a choice. Groggy, you shift, and a cascade of sand tumbles from the folds of your blanket. It's not just in your bed. You feel it sift into the crooks of your elbows, the rims of your eyes, the tender space between your toes. Desert hospitality is aggressive like that. It gives, but it's never neat. You notice the low, steady sound of a goat chewing somewhere nearby, a white and brown shape silhouetted against the tent wall. It's been up for hours, probably judging your sleep habits with the same silent disdain as your water skin. You reach for your clothing, every garment stiff with yesterday's dust, and assemble yourself for the day. The ritual is simple and practiced. Shake out the tunic, tap the boots together, duck and wrap and tie. The fabric still holds the memory of last night's fire, its hem faintly singed from a wayward spark. Outside, the air is dry enough to bite. There's no dew here, no gentle dampness to cool your lips or soften your steps. Just the sharp, mineral tang of sand hanging everywhere, in everything. You fumble for a strip of dried dates and a piece of unleavened bread. Breakfast in the desert being more function than feast. The dates are dense and sticky, bearing the concentrated sweetness of 1,000 suns. You chew slowly, watching rivulets of sunlight advance across your tent, illuminating the battered tin cup you use for tea. Even now, you can feel yesterday's heat lacing the fresh tea with the memory of afternoons that seemed impossible to survive. The morning routines outside begin with a murmur. Through the thin fabric walls, you catch scraps of conversation in the old tongue, a language that moves like wind across gravel, soft, then sharp, then fading. A cough, a laugh, the private cadence of a desert camp coming awake. Somewhere, a young camel brays indignantly at the prospect of another day under the rule of men and sun. For a moment, you imagine the desert as a stern matriarch, her embrace both punishing and protective, a landscape with a will, and you, a stubborn child refusing to learn its lessons. You sit for a while, feeling the way early light curls around the objects in the tent. The battered lantern, the brass amulet on a faded cord, the diary filled with pages gritty as the ground beneath. Each thing in its place, each place surrendered sooner or later to the sand. The tent is not home, but in this hour it becomes a small, stubborn outpost against the endless, shifting wilds. Outside, the tent flap billows like a beckoning hand, motes spiraling in the sunlight. You take a breath, taste the grit, the heat before its full arrival. There is no time left for dreams or remorse. The desert day has started, and it is, as ever, indifferent to your readiness. You brace yourself, peeling free from the last threads of sleep, and step outside. The sun, relentless and alive, is waiting, already greedy, already old, and you, only half awake, are welcomed back by the desert, which never quite let you go in the first place. Forget showers. If you want to clean up, you'll need a handful of sand and a prayer. You dab your face with a scrap of damp cloth, which instantly turns to sandpaper. Yes, exfoliation before breakfast. Modern spas charge extra for this. You'll quickly develop an appreciation for the little rituals of cleanliness you once took for granted back home. That handy bar of soap in your bathroom. Long gone. In the desert, luxe means a water bottle that isn't half full of grit. You guard each drop like a dragon hoarding treasure, doling it out in tiny rations, one for the mouth, one for the armpits. No, wait, just the mouth. Sorry, armpits. To start, you invent a new form of dry brushing. You take a ragged t-shirt or even your hand and sweep off as much dust and debris as possible. Think of it as brushing crumbs off a tablecloth, except the crumbs are everywhere, and the tablecloth is your body. Next comes the wash. Here's how it works. You pour a teaspoon of water onto the corner of your rag, squeeze it until it's barely damp, and wipe your face, neck, and, if you're feeling generous, your shoulders. Revel in the fleeting sense of freshness before it's replaced by an inevitable new layer of dust. Teeth brushing becomes an Olympic event, replete with mental calculations. Can you spare an ounce of precious water to rinse your mouth? Or will it be the desert toothbrush, a frayed twig chewed at the end until it fans out, which somehow manages to smear dust around your gums while still feeling like progress? Pro tip: mint-flavoured toothpaste may just be a spicy memory. You'll settle for unscented grit and a strong imagination. There is, of course, the unspoken art of privacy. Out here, modesty takes second place to necessity. With no stalls or washrooms, you crouch behind the nearest boulder, a lookout posted to ensure solitude. The wind, your ever-present companion, gleefully assists in dispersing tissues, sandblasting your exposed bits, and occasionally carrying your dignity away with a well-timed gust. Hygiene becomes a group bonding exercise, punctuated by laughter and creative cursing. Let's talk about eye care. The sand never rests. It sneaks under eyelashes and behind sunglasses, hitching a ride wherever it can. At some point, you accept that all attempts to keep your eyes clean are merely gestures to fate. Saline solution. Luxury item. You blink it out and tell yourself that gritty vision just builds character. Hair care is performed by the shake and fluff method. Running your hands through your scalp produces a cascade of dust fit for a Vegas magic show. If you're lucky, you'll summon a small hail of pebbles, remnants of last night's restless sleep on the rocky ground. Dandruff takes on a new meaning. now paired with sand drifts that would make a camel jealous. Of course, the biggest challenge is learning to adjust your standards. 2 days ago, you would wrinkle your nose at the faintest whiff of sweat. Now, you evaluate clean, not by absence of odor, but by degree. If your shirt stands on its own, it's probably time to change it. Assuming, of course, you packed a spare. As the sun climbs, you catch your reflection in a canteen. The face looking back at you is flushed, wind-battered, and dust-streaked, eyebrows flecked with grit. Yet, a strange pride builds. Out here, survival is the truest form of self-care, and a morning routine, however minimal, is a small victory against the wilderness. You realize you don't miss hot showers as much as you thought, not when every drop of water means you've conquered another day in the desert. Welcome to Hygiene Desert Edition, harsher, funnier, and entirely unforgettable. Your meal? Flatbread baked against hot rocks, slightly gritty, with dates that double as both main dish and dessert. No coffee, unless you fancy chewing on some roasted acacia beans and pretending. Imagine, you're sitting in that pale wash of dawn, the horizon not yet scalded by midday sun, sand cool under your legs, and the silence is a presence so complete you can hear your own thoughts shifting about. In front of you, laid out on a cloth, is a portion of bread still fragrant with the ghost of fire and stone. The smell is earthy, clean, a reminder that some flavors are forged out of necessity, not excess. Your hands are dusty as you tear off a piece, break it open, and watch the steam spiral away, vanishing as swiftly as the chill. Beside the bread, a pile of dates, a dull brown, sticky, in the way only sun-ripened fruit can be, offering a dense, honeyed sweetness that lingers on your tongue. It's not a feast, not in the way you might picture a lavish spread, but out here, under the dome of an indifferent sky, breakfast is stripped down to basics. There's no cutlery, no porcelain, just your hands and an appetite girded by hardship. Every bite is deliberate. Every morsel has a history you can taste if you pay attention. The flour ground by hand, the dough kneaded with last night's water, the fire stoked by dry brush someone gathered before dawn. This is food born of survival, passed down through centuries, becoming not just sustenance, but an act of resistance, a way to greet the morning with hope, however slender. As you eat, you might find yourself reflecting on what's missing, the small luxuries you take for granted. There is no butter, no wine, not even the bitter comfort of coffee. You may joke with your companions about the acacia beans, dark and hard as stones, roasted to the edge of bitterness so you can trick your tongue and your memory. Yes, this is almost coffee, isn't it? Laughter rises easily on an empty stomach. It's the only seasoning you can afford. But in this laughter, there's a defiance, a way to assert your humanity against the bare backdrop of the desert. Outside the circle of your breakfast, the world is waking. Goats trotting past. Their bells are quiet music. A line of women with water jars balanced on their heads, moving with the unhurried grace of those who have nowhere else to be. There is comfort in routine, a rhythm hammered out by generations. Bread and dates, the simplest of meals, yet laced with memory, with love, with hope you taste in every bite as the day begins. What does it feel like? This kind of breakfast? Oddly enough, it feels like enough. There's an honesty here. The bread is not quite soft, sometimes scorched on one side, sometimes full of grit from the grinding stones. The dates, wrinkled, dense, are a luxury precisely because there isn't much else. In this act of sharing, of breaking bread together, you see the scaffolding of a community. Each person is fed, not just by food, but by the act itself, a ritual against hunger, against despair. When breakfast is done, the cloth is shaken out, crumbs flung to the wind, and you stand up, brushing sand from your knees. The sun is higher now, shadows shrinking. You feel lighter, not because you are full, but because you are connected, both to this hard land and to those who share it with you. And somewhere in the lingering taste of dates and bread, there is hope, a small, persistent sweetness that accompanies you into whatever the desert day will demand. Today's outfit is brought to you by the colour beige. Everything is light, loose, and awkwardly tied on with whatever string or rope you haven't already lost. It's less runway chic and more, please don't let the sun roast my organs. Welcome to the desert spa. Circa never. Our clothing line's main inspirations are what's at the bottom of my backpack and which item smells the least like fermentation. If you find a hat, treasure it like ancient gold, because shade is the new black out here. And if you're thinking of layering for style points, congratulations, you're officially broiling yourself on papillote. When it comes to daily dressing, fashion rules apply, just not the ones anyone would want. In this world, the phrase dress to kill refers strictly to mosquitoes, not red carpets. Sandals, sure, if you like exfoliating your feet with gravel. Most people opt for closed-toe mystery shapes, formerly known as sneakers, now known for their instantly recognizable shade of dirt of the month. Accessories are a must, by which I mean sunglasses you can barely see through, and a bandana that's pulled so tight on your nose, you start contemplating if oxygen is overrated. The best accessory is still a working zipper, but legend tells that no original zippers have survived past week 2. Everything else is being kept together, barely, by hope, creative knots, and possibly some dried plant matter. Laundry day is more wish than routine. If you're feeling fancy, shake out the sand, hang your shirt on a shrub, and let the ever-present wind do its thing. Just remember, the line between air-dried crisp and I left it for 5 minutes and a hawk stole it is razor thin. Every item in your wardrobe is seasoned with just a pinch of resignation and a heavy dash of, don't smell me, I definitely don't want to smell you. If you meet someone else and notice a patchwork repair, take a moment to appreciate the craftsmanship. Dental floss and duct tape have never looked so couture. You might even swap survival fashion tips. Oh, is that a sleeve-turned water bottle holder? Genius. There's a bond among the dust-covered, forming a society where personal expression means you've managed not to lose your only hat to a gust of wind. Let's talk colour theory. The only palette here starts with sunscreen white and descends rapidly into gritty tan and mysterious grey. Anything with a logo has been washed out by the elements and can now be read only by expert archaeologists. On laundry day, everyone's khaki and all secrets hide behind a uniform layer of dust. The main brand on display is function over form, and comfort comes down to which shirt chafes the least after midday. But lose all hope, and you lose your sense of humour, which is the only insulating layer you really get for free. Finding a leftover sock, no mate required, feels like winning a game show. New arrivals might try to tuck in a shirt or don a belt. That lasts until their first run-in with a cactus. Then, it's back to drawstrings and unintentional crop tops. Ultimately, survival fashion is simple. Keep it covered, keep it loose, and pretend it's vintage. When the stakes are battling sunstroke, you learn fast that personal style is what's left after everything else has literally fallen apart. Wear your dirt like a badge of honour, because out here, the only thing that needs to sparkle is your water bottle. If you'd like adjustments or examples woven in to match a particular detail from your transcripts, just let me know. Your prized camel greets you with a grunt and a face full of morning breath. It's time for the daily adventure of wrangling her across shifting dunes. Picture herding cats, but the cats spit and weigh 1,000 pounds. The sun is barely up. The desert is still a quilt of cool blues and purples, but you're already on your feet. For generations, your family's livelihood has depended on these camels. Every dawn, every blistering afternoon, every evening spent patching up fences, you and your ancestors have lived and breathed camel herding. It's a legacy that's wrapped itself around your life like a well-worn blanket, equal parts comfort and responsibility. Your grandfather used to say, "A camel carries not just cargo, but your fortune, your reputation, your future." The words echo as you coax your reluctant beast with a bribe of fresh greens, earning a side-eye and a string of drool. Camel herding isn't a solo act. The whole family gets roped in, quite literally. Your younger siblings dart between legs as agile as desert foxes, rounding up the more stubborn animals with practiced yips and whistles. In truth, there's choreography to the chaos. Your father coordinates from atop his own camel, his voice booming, a whip cracking nearby. Your mother is the strategist behind the scenes. She keeps records of births, tracks lineage, diagnoses illnesses before you even notice something is off. Every member plays a part, including you. The mornings might be frantic, but there's a rhythm, a tradition passed down in the cadence of shouted nicknames and laughter, the crunch of dry scrub underfoot, and the creak of saddle leather. But it's not all hijinks and harmony. Sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts, a camel bolts, spooked by a snake or a flurry of wind. Cue a high-speed pursuit over the dunes, your heart thumping as you skid and slide, clutching for a rope that's just out of reach. The desert can stretch for miles, and a single lost camel means hours of tracking hoofprints under a sun that turns the sand to embers. Frustration simmers, tempers flare. But then, as if planned, you spy the runaway calmly nibbling a thorn bush, looking for all the world like she owns the place. It's both exasperating and endearing. Your relief dissolves your annoyance, and you haul her home with a rueful shake of your head. Evenings bring stories and laughter, shared around the smoky warmth of a campfire. This is when the legends come alive. Tales of heroic ancestors who crossed the desert with nothing but a dream and an obstinate camel. Stories of storms weathered and rival herders outwitted. Sometimes guests stop by, traders, distant relatives, even tourists, and the younger children perform songs while the adults barter, share news, and recall old times. The family bonds are forged here, as sturdy as the ropes that bind your camel's harness. Over time, you realize that camel herding isn't just about the animals. It's about patience, learning to adapt when things don't go as planned. It's about teamwork, resilience, ingenuity, and a willingness to laugh at yourself when you get spat on for the 6th time before breakfast. It's about pride in your roots and in the knowledge that you're part of an unbroken chain, stretching back centuries. Each day, a small, beautiful act of stubborn endurance against the vast, unforgiving sweep of the desert. So, as you settle down to rest, your camel dozing contentedly nearby. You know you're exactly where you're meant to be. Family, tradition, and these indomitable beasts. They're more than a way of life. They're a story, and you're right in the middle of telling it. Water. It's the desert's version of gold. You squint at the shimmering horizon and hope you're not just hallucinating. The local well is 5 miles away, and carrying water back is a community event. Mostly because everyone hopes someone else will do it. In the desert, you learn quickly that water is not something you just find. It's something you chase, sometimes with your feet, sometimes with your nose, always with a certain mix of hope and desperation. The old-timers tell stories about ancestors who could smell a water source before the first ripple appeared in the sand. You smile, half in awe, half thinking they might have inhaled a little too much dust. But when you're thirsty enough, you start paying attention to every clue the land offers. The art of hunting for water begins with reading the ground, much like reading a good mystery novel. There are clues, red herrings, and the occasional dramatic twist. You look for the greenest patch of scrub brush. Vegetation is a double agent betraying the soil's secrets. Standing trees sometimes mean shallow water beneath, especially if they're willows, tamarisks, or the occasional palm clinging stubbornly to life. Birds play a surprising role in your search. In the early morning or evening, flocks of pigeons or doves might make a beeline, remarkably purposeful, for a water source. Even the nervous flutter of smaller creatures, like desert hares, can provide important tips. Where animals congregate, water isn't far. This turns every walk into a detective stakeout, with you scribbling mental notes and second-guessing every move the locals make. Of course, there are pitfalls, both literal and metaphorical. What looks like a luscious, inviting pool from a distance might turn out to be the dreaded mirage, shimmering heat bouncing off the cracked earth, fooling you into a thirsty trek. Here, there's no shame in falling for the oldest trick in the book. It happens to everyone at least once. When you finally learn to spot the difference between hope and hologram, you've reached a certain status in the community, a rite of passage as valuable as the water itself. There's also the ancient practice of listening for underground springs. Some swear they can hear running water beneath their feet if they're quiet enough. Though, as anyone who's spent time under the baking sky knows, the difference between listening with intent and hearing things is razor thin. Elders will tap the earth with a wooden cane, pressing it gently to the ground, convinced they can sense a subtle vibration. Whether it's truth or tradition, you follow their lead, because infallibility often hides beneath the veil of certainty. Once you've found a promising spot, then comes the digging. This isn't a job for the lone wolf. It's time for teamwork. Everyone grabs a shovel or a nearby stick, or just resorts to bare hands. You dig carefully, watching for the soil to shift, holding your breath every time it darkens, signaling the proximity of moisture. When water finally seeps into view, celebrations ensue. Someone will always make a joke. It's about time, or could have sworn it was closer yesterday. And then, everyone drinks deeply, grateful and silent. But water hunting isn't just about survival. It's about respect. Pulling sustenance from the earth with your own hands forges a bond with the landscape. You don't waste a drop. Rituals emerge, splashing the first sip in the sand as an offering, or arguing, affectionately, over whose turn it is to haul the next bucket. Children learn early. They tag along, learning from mistakes, sometimes making up songs to break the silence as they trudge home in the setting sun, water sloshing, hope restored. Finding water becomes second nature. It's not glamorous, but it is an art, one perfected by need, shaped by tradition, and animated by community. In the desert, water is more than just a resource. It's the glue that binds, the goalpost at the end of every journey, and, on the best days, a reason to celebrate together. Washing dishes, easy. Sand, sweeping the tent. Sand, preparing meals. Bonus sand. You begin to realize that sand is basically a food group here. There's a unique choreography to dessert chores, a rhythm dictated by the ceaseless wind and the ever-invading grains of dust. No matter how meticulously you wash a plate, by the time it dries, a thin, almost invisible film of sand will have settled back upon its surface, like a stubborn ghost refusing to leave. You try putting the dishes in a sealed tub, only to discover, hours later, that sand respects no boundaries. It creeps in with the patience of a seasoned infiltrator. Take the simple act of making coffee in the morning. At home, it's a sleepy, almost mindless ritual. Out here, it becomes a tactical operation. Locate the pot, shake out yesterday's sand, scoop from the dwindling water supply and guard it from the breeze like the crown jewels. Pour the grounds, stir, and if you're lucky, only a few grains hitch a ride in your mug. The first bitter sip? Gritty. You grimace, then shrug. It's become an expected flavour note. Sweeping out the tent is a Sisyphean task. No sooner do you clear a patch, half feeling like a frustrated monk tending his sand garden, than a gust rolls through, and you're back at square one. Some days you wonder if you're cleaning or just rearranging the dust, keeping yourself busy with the illusion of progress. But these chores, repetitive and unglamorous as they are, become a strange comfort. They're the structure within chaos, the heartbeat of your days. Laundry presents its own sandy saga. You rinse out shirts and socks in a battered basin, convinced you're waging a valiant fight for cleanliness. As you wring them out, the water runs cloudy, and you're foolishly optimistic. Out they go to dry in the sun, pinned to a rope that sags between rocks. Of course, the real revelation comes at bedtime, slipping into what should be a clean shirt, only to feel that unmistakable, scratchy residue against your skin. You wonder, not for the first time, if desert folk just surrender and accept the omnipresence of grit. Over time, you notice a transformation, not in the chores themselves, which never become easier, but in your attitude towards them. Each task is an exercise in acceptance, a practice in patience. You learn to laugh at the futility of banishing sand, to find a certain dignity in persistent effort. Even as your fingernails remain permanently lined with dust, even as your meals crunch in all the wrong places, you realize that sharing the labor, passing water jugs, holding down tent flaps, splitting the cooking, creates its own sense of camaraderie. The complaints become jokes, the exhaustion, a badge of honor. It's in these moments, in the midst of daily chores, surrounded by the endless, indifferent wild, that you start to appreciate the small victories. A cup of tea with only a hint of sand, a sleeping bag shaken almost clean, laughter echoing off canyons as you sweep the same patch for the third time. There's an unspoken understanding that no one escapes the desert's embrace unchanged, that grit means more than just the stuff in your shoes. It is perseverance, humour, and optimism braided together. The qualities forged in the quiet repetition of ordinary tasks under extraordinary conditions. By the end of the week, desert chores feel less like burdens and more like rites of passage. Sand in every fold, yes, but also a newfound resilience in every bone. Out here, grit is not just what you wash off at the end of the day, but what you discover you've gained, one chore at a time. When the sky turns yellow and the wind starts howling, you duck inside and hope your tent doesn't fly off to Syria. You wrap every inch of exposed skin and try not to inhale. It's fine, just a little taste of exfoliating chaos. But here's the thing. A sandstorm in the desert is less a meteorological event and more an unscheduled stress test for your sanity. The air thickens with sand and static. Everything you own starts to crunch. You've seen movies where sandstorms are cinematic, beautiful on the big screen. In real life, the world shrinks to the sound of grains ricocheting off your sunglasses, and your teeth grind down a few millimeters just from breathing. Even your thoughts get gritty. Preparation is everything. As soon as the wind picks up, even before the first yellow curtain appears, seasoned desert travelers start battening down the hatches. Don't underestimate the value of a well-staked tent. If you think you hammered it in enough, Do it 3 more times. Every zipper gets closed, every bag gets tucked under heavy gear, and anything less secure than a cement truck is immediately classified as flight risk. Socks in shoes, shoes in bags, bags under tarps. It's a nesting doll of anti-sand defenses. Inside your portable cocoon, the experience shifts from panic to parody. The wind keens and moans, pressing the walls of your tent so flat against your face that you become intimately acquainted with the stitching pattern. Your tent mate, already on edge, points out that the tent fabric is breathing in a way that sounds suspiciously sentient. Then, of course, comes the existential moment of questioning. Is it better to be outside getting sandblasted, or in here, growing steadily more claustrophobic and slightly unhinged? It's impossible to keep sand out. It slips through the tiniest seams, rides in on your socks, forms fine drifts in every zipper crevice. Expect to find it in your ears, inside your pillowcase, under your eyelids, and, most alarmingly, in your morning oatmeal, no matter how tightly you sealed the bag. Veteran, burners offer tips. Line your nose with a dab of petroleum jelly to trap inhaled particles. But that only helps so much when your nostrils are essentially sandpapered. Time warps inside a sandstorm. You check your watch. 5 minutes have passed, or is it 50? Conversations are reduced to the essentials, shouted over the rattle of tent fabric. Has it stopped? No. Can you hear me? Barely. There's an odd camaraderie in mutual discomfort. Some people sing. Some tell stories. Some just stare at the ever-shifting distortion of light through yellow nylon and wonder if they'll ever be clean again. And when the storm finally begins to subside, usually hours after your patience wore thin, the desert delivers another surprise. The world outside looks completely transformed. Everything is sculpted with fresh sand. Bikes half buried, camp flags lost, familiar landmarks reshaped by wind and nature's rough hand. People emerge, blinking like moles and spitting grit, laughing about their collective trial by abrasion. Now's the sandstorm aftermath protocol. Shake out everything you own. Open your mouth a little wider to dislodge stubborn grains. Check if your tent is still technically upright. Survey the fresh landscape for anything you recognize. Reunite with your neighbors, those you last saw as silhouettes behind flapping tarps, and swap tales of tent mishaps and improvised sand defenses. The storm becomes folklore before the damp footprints have settled, another badge of shared adversity pinned to the ever-expanding tapestry of desert survival. In the end, sandstorms are brutal, humbling, and, if you're honest, a little bit exhilarating. There's something unifying about surviving in such an absurdly inhospitable environment. Every storm is another story, another layer of grit you carry home with you, proof that sometimes the best exfoliation is the kind you can't wash off. Visiting neighbors requires a camel ride and an entire afternoon, so most pop-ins are carefully scheduled a week in advance. Gossip spreads by caravan and usually arrives 6 months after it stops being relevant. Living nomadically, social life unfolds at a slower, more deliberate pace. Unlike the urban whirlwind where a drop by means a sudden knock on your apartment door, here, every visit is an expedition. You plan, confirm timings, prepare supplies for the journey, water, tea, maybe a prized morsel of dried cheese as a gift. The anticipation grows. After all, it's not every day you see someone outside your own tent. The word spreads through families. They're coming on Thursday. The menu is prepped. Children are scrubbed. Scarves and blankets get shaken out under the big sky. When the guests finally appear on the horizon, 2 tiny dots cresting a sand dune or rock outcropping. It's a minor spectacle. The animals notice first, pricking up their ears. Then, the family dog, worn by sun, but still reliable, barks a greeting. By the time the guests arrive, the entire encampment is either assembled or peeking discreetly from behind tent flaps. Social customs are layered with meaning and guided by tradition. Tea is poured. First cup to the guest, naturally, bitter and hot. No one talks about what they came for immediately. That would be far too abrupt. Instead, they ask about your health, your flocks, whether the last sandstorm was as bad as rumors suggested. The script is unhurried. Conversation is woven between sips, as slow and steady as the desert wind. In a place where news travels slowly, stories take on the quality of legend. Someone's cousin saw a falcon, another neighbor's camel gave birth to twins, and by the time it reaches your camp, those twins are rare, magnificent beasts. You receive the news not to fact-check, but to marvel at the enduring human need to share, embellish, and stay connected, even across weeks and distances. Leisure, too, is communal. Games with knucklebones, songs passed down for generations, evenings spent around a fire, listening to elders recite poetry by stars and firelight. Here, storytelling isn't background noise. It's entertainment, instruction, memory, and binding magic, all in one. Children listen open-mouthed to tales about journeys that lasted months, traders who outwitted bandits, and storms survived by sheer luck and camel sense. These stories are not just for fun. They're social glue, threading together families, tribes, and even formerly feuding neighbors. But nomadic social life is also marked by a certain spaciousness, the respect for personal solitude. With only a few people around and miles of space in every direction, it's perfectly acceptable to savor a day alone with your thoughts. There's no stigma in needing time by yourself. After all, when you finally do gather, you'll bring stories and energy back to the circle. Modernity is making inroads, of course. Messaging via satellite phones means some news arrives a little quicker, and market days in the nearest oasis town bring larger gatherings, often a jumble of news, haggling, and laughter, all mixed together under woven roof shade. Yet, even these modern touches can't erode the fundament of nomadic social life: mutual dependency, ritual hospitality, the shared meal, and moments of connection that must by necessity be intentional and deeply valued. In the desert, friendships aren't measured by frequency of interaction, but by reliability and depth. If you're ever truly in need, a lost animal, an unexpected illness, your neighbor will saddle up and ride the hours to your tent, day or night. And when it matters, these distances vanish. So, the next time you fret about a late party invitation or a friend not replying to a text, imagine instead waiting 6 months for the gossip to arrive, then getting on your camel to swap stories under the endless sky. For the nomad, social life is less about speed and more about savoring deep roots across wide open spaces. The village bazaar is equal parts chaos and therapy. Here, you can buy essentials like more rope, goat cheese, and stories from a guy who swears he once saw a giant sandworm. Navigating the bazaar isn't an activity, it's an endurance sport. First, you become part of a slow-moving river of humanity. Grandmothers haggle for figs with a tenacity usually associated with high-stakes poker. Vendors yell over one another in a cacophony that somehow coalesces into its own language. Part trade, part gossip, part moral philosophy. There's a guy shouting about the medicinal properties of goat hair, cures rheumatism, next to a table of mysterious bottled liquids, whose labels have all faded to the same shade of practical uncertainty. A visit to the bazaar isn't complete without attempting to buy rope. There is always one stall specializing in rope, and only rope, in at least 17 lengths and just as many thicknesses. "What are you tying today?" the vendor asks, sizing you up for either a coil of climbing rope or something thinner, fishing line perhaps, or twine for trussing a chicken. You claim it's for tying up bundles, only for him to wink knowingly. "Ah, bundle tying, our best sellers. But may I interest you in rope that also repels ghosts? Special price today, only for you." And then, of course, there's always the goat cheese. 3 stalls claim their cheese is made from the happiest goats in the village. 2 claim their goats are blessed by the local priest. And 1, positioned at the very end, insists that his cheese is made the old way, with milk collected at the exact hour of dawn during a full moon, while the goat sings. You sample the smoothest chunk and commit to buying a small wedge. The vendor throws in a cautionary tale about eating too much cheese on a hot afternoon, and what it did to that one traveller last year who thought his hat was a lantern. No bazaar day is complete without acquiring at least one story. On the corner near the rug merchant, a man with a beard like an uprooted shrub waves you over. "Did you hear?" he calls, drawing in a circle of listeners. "Last night the sandworms trembled near the eastern dune. I saw it myself. The ground shook, the air went cold, and suddenly the goats formed a protective circle around the well. A sign, if I've ever seen one. Everyone leans in, not because they believe him, but because the details grow more extravagant with each retelling. What began as a rumour about a trembling dune is, by midday, a full-blown legend involving 3 monks, a flaming chicken, and a prophecy about endless rope. You nod solemnly, already planning how you'll retell it later. Somewhere between the olive vendor and the man selling used knives, a group of children zip by, their hands sticky with honey dates. They duck behind barrels, playing their version of hide and seek, which mostly involves shouting, "You can't catch me," until someone inevitably collides with a donkey. The donkey, like most veterans of Bazaar Day, is unimpressed. By late afternoon, your small pouch is heavier. Cheese, rope, maybe an inlaid cup you never needed but suddenly love, and your mind is crowded with new stories. The air is heavy with cumin and the possibility that today's bargains are tomorrow's tall tales. As you duck into a shaded alley to sip tea, someone approaches, offering to sell you a map, guaranteed to lead you to happiness, or at least the quickest way out of the bazaar. You laugh, say you'll take your chances, and pocket one last story for the road. Whatever the week ahead brings, everything feels lighter. Maybe it's the cheese, maybe it's the rumours, or maybe it's just the low-grade euphoria from surviving another market day. Either way, you wouldn't trade it for all the ghost-repellent rope in the village. Your friend swears by horses, your team camel. The debate spills into dinner and probably has for generations. Either way, both animals will step on your foot just to remind you who's boss. On the surface, the question sounds simple: a horse or a camel? But dig a little deeper, beyond the glossy posters or Instagram reels, and you'll find a riveting feud that goes far beyond preference. There's family history wrapped up in this choice. In some parts of the world, children learn to ride camels before bicycles, their unhurried stride a lullaby across arid plains. Elsewhere, the horse is a rite of passage, saddled up for everything: transport, ritual, even the occasional joust in the backyard with a broomstick. But whether your ancestors rode into battle on horseback or caravanned with camels, this argument rarely feels settled. Let's start with personality. Yes, animals have it, and like most families at Thanksgiving, it's both a blessing and curse. Horses dazzle with their grace, their long lashes and Disney princess energy. They're quick and, when the mood strikes, affectionate. But make no mistake, they have opinions. If your horse doesn't want to cross a puddle, you're not crossing that puddle. Camels, on the other hand, wear their mood on their sleeve, or, more accurately, their lips. Grumpy, dismissive, stubbornly independent. They've got zero interest in impressing anyone. A camel's preferred method of communication: spitting, especially if they don't care for your haircut. Yet both animals possess a kind of wisdom. Horses are team players when it matters, attuned to a human's body language, able to anticipate a rider's next move. There's romance in that partnership, the synchronized gallop, the steadying nuzzle on a hard day. Camels have their own genius, honed by centuries in the world's harshest landscapes. Their endurance borders on the supernatural, shrugging off heat, sandstorms, and long stretches between water stops. When a camel decides to move, it keeps moving. No drama, no fuss. Don't confuse stubbornness for stupidity. Camels remember faces, routes, and mistreatment, and they rarely forget a grudge. But which is a better pet? Depends what you want in a companion. If your dream pet comes with silky mane and longing looks, horses fit the bill. They bond tightly with their humans and thrive on routine and company. But don't expect couch cuddling. They're giant, elegant introverts who sometimes just need to run. Camels, meanwhile, can be affectionate in their own way. They might lean in for a scratch behind the ear or let you feed them treats from your hand. But owning a camel is a bit like befriending a wise yet unpredictable neighbor. Fascinating, rewarding, and a little perilous if you forget the boundaries. If we shift from pet to transport, the plot thickens. Horses are unrivaled when it comes to speed and agility. They're the original all-terrain vehicle, able to pick their way up mountains or dash across open fields. Historically, they've hauled armies to victory, ploughed fields, and even worked as therapy animals. But horses are high maintenance. They need regular shoeing, dental care. Yes, really. And careful feeding. A wrong snack can make them very sick, very quickly. Camels, conversely, are the MVPs of endurance travel. They move with a rolling stride that makes long journeys feel less jarring. Their double row of eyelashes, flicking away, desert, sand. Need to cross 100 miles with a few jugs of water and a pack of supplies? Camel's your answer. They're economical, practical, and they pack a trunkload of quirky resilience. But don't ask for a sprint finish. Camels have one gear, and it's, I'll get there when I get there. Ultimately, there's no settling the question, only knowing what you value most. Devotion or defiance, speed or stamina, the elegant gallop or the steady plod. Whichever side you choose, one thing is certain: whether a horse or a camel, your feet are fair game, and the animal is always the boss. You learn the difference between kinda thirsty and I could drink my own bath water. The solution: sip, ration, and never trust a mirage that looks like a lemonade stand. The desert sun is not your friend. It doesn't care about your plans or how much water you thought was enough. After your first hour without shade, your lips start feeling like old leather, and you realize your tongue is now somehow both fuzzy and glued to the roof of your mouth. This is where you meet a primal version of yourself, negotiating with your last half ounce of water, as if it's the secret to immortality. Suddenly, you understand all the water rationing scenes in every survival movie, except that Danny from The Office keeps slurping loudly on his insulated bottle, and you're contemplating the physics of mugging him for it. But it's not just about feeling parched. There's a creeping lethargy, like your body is quietly shutting down non-essential systems. At first, you ignore it. Who wants to admit they're losing to something as mundane as thirst? And then, boom, your head starts pounding. Every step feels like it happens in slow motion. The line between being a little dehydrated and having your IQ plummet to that of a raisin is much, much thinner than you think. Here's the real secret. Waiting until you feel thirsty is a rookie mistake. The trick, learned from watching the unbothered pace of seasoned hikers and confirmed by every wilderness guide worth their salt, is to sip water steadily, even when you'd rather chug the whole bottle. Guzzle it, and you'll have a few glorious moments of relief before your remaining supply evaporates into a distant memory. But sip, and you become a master of hydration economics, stretching every drop for maximum survival and minimum regret. Let's talk about mirages. In the heat, your dehydrated brain plays tricks on you. Rippling puddles shimmer in the distance. And even a bent Coke can suddenly look like a source of salvation. Don't fall for it. Instead, get familiar with the concept of the planned water stop. Always know where your next actual source is. Not the oasis. Your imagination conjures up just beyond the next dune or stretch of concrete. Seasoned survivors never skip a refill, even when their bottles are mostly full. Paranoia, in this case, is just good sense. You'll get creative too. Hydration tablets. Tastes like a chalkboard, but they might just get you through the last stretch without your muscles cramping up like a broken wind-up toy. Electrolytes aren't just for marathon runners. They're the difference between making it and becoming a cautionary tale. And about those hydration hacks you read online. Drinking salty soup, or even snagging a pickle from a gas station fridge, can sometimes do more than plain water. Just try to focus on things that will help you retain fluids, not send you running to the world's driest bathroom. Dehydration isn't dramatic, at least not at first. It's sneaky. Your brain gets fuzzy, your decision-making starts to slip, and even your sense of humour dries up, fast. Crew members bickering about who's hogging the water bottle isn't petty drama. It's your body's quiet alarm bells ringing. Know the symptoms: headache, dry mouth, dizziness, confusion, irritability. If you're experiencing any of these, call for a break, find a patch of shade, and start rehydrating, slowly and steadily. Finally, if you want a real test of your character, watch how people ration water when everyone is equally desperate. You see diplomacy break down, alliances quietly form, and those who made fun of your extra water bottle suddenly become your best friends. Bring extra for the group, and you'll be a hero. Forget, and you'll be the villain in someone's desert survival story. Because out here, thirst isn't just a feeling, it's a test. And water, well, it's everything. Matchmaking often involves inquiring about dowries, goats, and sand-resistant cookware. The wedding feast consists of shared bread, lots of dancing, and a new tent as the ultimate wedding present. In the sands, every stage of courtship is both a negotiation and a celebration. Parents arrange introductions, sometimes swayed by the size of a sheep herd or the shine of copper pots. Gossip flows like sweet tea among the elders, assessors of character and keepers of tradition, making sure no secret escapes the dunes. Young love, typically conducted under sensible parental supervision, and the suspicious gaze of aunts, flourishes beneath sun-bleached awnings or around crackling campfires. In these communities, a proposal is rarely a simple question. Instead, it unfolds as a delicate ritual. The prospective groom's family, after pursuing the unofficial channels, quiet inquiries with cousins, discussion with the mosque imam, eventually pays a formal visit. This procession is laden with nervous smiles, hopeful glances, and gifts, bolts of cloth, fragrant spices, and, if the negotiators are particularly ambitious, a carefully sealed jar of imported instant coffee. Dowries aren't always monetary. A promise of a sturdy camel or 3 chickens might tip the scales in an otherwise even match. Every detail is open to community input. How much bread will be shared? Which uncles will sing the loudest? And who will bake the wedding flatbread? Which, as everyone knows, dictates whether the marriage will be blessed with luck or destined for squabbling over burnt crusts. The wedding setting depends entirely on the wind's mood, as tents are shifted and repitched, and carpets unfurled on the softest patch of ground. The preparations begin far in advance, measured in both sunrises and the number of times the water jugs are refilled. Relatives journey from distant encampments, camels groaning under gifts tied in patched-up sacks. The women, a vibrant cloud of chattering, gold jewellery and henna-stained fingers, crowd together to prepare the bride, carefully braiding her hair and instructing her in the secrets of desert marriages, how to share water and how to share laughter. If you listen as the evening descends, you'll hear traditional love songs drifting through the air, mingling with the scent of roasting lamb and cumin. Old men recall their own weddings, largely organised by their mothers, and offer advice that sounds, strangely, exactly like warnings. Children sneak dates from the platters, only to have their hands playfully slapped away by grandmothers with hawk-like reflexes. The groom, meanwhile, polishes his best shoes, no easy task in the sand, and rehearses the right way to look both grateful and modest during greetings. When the festivities proper begin, food and music become languages in themselves. Long, low tables are crowded with steaming tagines, rounds of bread, and gleaming piles of dates. As the meal progresses, laughter bounces between the tent walls. Dancers, led by spry teenagers eager to show off, create a swirl of movement, sending up sand in arcs that catch the lantern light. Occasionally a goat, startled by the noise, adds to the commotion, much to everyone's amusement. The exchange of gifts is both symbolic and practical. Pots, blankets, and for the lucky, a brand new tent, creamy canvas, sturdy poles, perhaps even a sewn-in patch of bright embroidery. It's more than a roof. It is a promise that, rain or sandstorm, the new couple will endure together. Finally, there's a pause, a moment when the revelry hushes. Elders step forward with blessings and sometimes poetry, offering hopes for many children, peaceful years, and just enough hardship to keep things interesting. The new couple stands at the threshold of their tent, surrounded by the rhythm of drums and the desert's vast starry silence. In this world, love means partnership, building a home in shifting sand, dancing through dust storms, and believing that, together, you can always carve out a shared oasis. And so, as dawn stirs, the feasting winds down. New footprints, side by side, mark the sand. An everyday miracle, and the promise of many stories yet to come. Raising kids means teaching them how to dodge scorpions, chase runaway camels, and always close the tent flap. Playdates are mostly camel watching and screaming when a lizard gets too close. Out here, the sand is your playground and your enemy. Every parent learns to do a thorough snake scan before letting their little ones dig into a dune, because nothing ruins sand vibe. It's a viper sighting. Even the family dog has learned to spot trouble. He'll bark at a scorpion from a safe distance, then stare at you until you do something about it. Desert laundry days are another challenge. You haven't really parented until you've fished a beetle out of a sock or found sun-baked gecko tracks imprinted on your laundry. We hang the clothes high and hope the wind is on our side. Otherwise, you might spend half of an afternoon hiking to the next village because your kid's superhero pajamas took flight. School drop-offs are different here. Sometimes they're a 5-minute stroll. Other times it's a half-hour camel ride, because the family Jeep decided it prefers watching the sunrise over starting its engine. Either way, you end up at the same mud brick schoolyard where parents exchange survival tips like rare coins, best way to get cactus thorns out, or which home remedies actually work on heat rash. Spoiler, not camel milk, no matter what grandma says. Birthday parties have their own flavour too. Forget clowns and magicians. Here, the main attraction is usually watching the local goat herd do tricks with his most stubborn billy goat. There's always a cake, though it might have more sand than frosting on windy days. Presents are handed over with practiced nonchalance because everyone's fingers are sticky with dates and honey. Bedtime in the desert is both a ritual and a negotiation. The sky erupts with stars, and every child, no matter how tired, thinks they're entitled to counting every single one before closing their eyes. Stories aren't just about princesses or pirates. They're about ancestors who tricked bandits out of their best camels or found hidden water right when hope seemed lost. The tales are half lesson, half lullaby, and all magic. Discipline gets creative. There's no go to your room when you all sleep in the same tent, so punishments have to fit the environment. Maybe it's sweeping the sand out from under the mats or carrying water jugs, with plenty of encouragement. You'll be as strong as a racing camel in no time. And when there's a real disagreement, you settle it like grown-ups. A race across the nearest dune. Winner gets the last piece of sweet bread. Still, desert parenting isn't all chasing dangers and improvising. There's a quiet beauty to it too. Watching your children fall asleep by the flicker of a lantern, their eyelashes dusty and sun-kissed, while the wind hums through the date palms outside. You realize, at the day's end, that they're growing up with stories written in starlight and grit, learning resilience, one sandy adventure at a time. Raising kids desert style isn't just about surviving. It's about making every challenge part of the story. It's hoping they'll remember how to shoe a scorpion, but more importantly, how to find the oasis when life is mostly sand. Everything is either venomous, hungry, or both. You develop the reflexes of a ninja just trying to put sandal to foot without upsetting a sleepy viper. Living among desert wildlife isn't so much about learning the animal's routines as it is about working around your own. You start every morning with a mental checklist. Shake out the boots. Scorpions like to surprise you, and stepping blindly in the dark is a rookie mistake. Inspect the tent's zipper for the telltale grooves of a curious snake's passage. And if you hear rustling at dawn, just remember, it's never the wind. It's always some creature out for breakfast. Odds are, it wants the same granola bars you're hiding in your backpack. With time, you become an involuntary expert in desert diplomacy. There's a certain etiquette to sharing space with an animal that could hospitalize you. Eye contact with a monitor lizard needs to be brief. Hold it too long, and you're suddenly the protagonist in an Animal Planet episode with questionable outcomes. Ignore an indignant camel spider, and they'll make sure your sleeping bag feels like a haunted house. But it's not all adversarial. Living here sharpens your senses, and weirdly, your sense of humour. For every genuinely frightening moment, like discovering a nest of baby-horned vipers beneath your camp stool, there's at least one incident you'll laugh about later, like that time a gecko fell into your water bottle and both of you did a panicked dance in front of the whole group, or the eternal saga of the lizard, who insists the best vantage point for sunbathing is always the rim of your coffee cup. The desert's most successful residents aren't the ones who wage war on its creatures, but the ones who get crafty. You learn to rig up a makeshift critter moat with a ring of water bottles to keep ants at bay. Food storage becomes an art form. Anything less than airtight, and a midnight kangaroo rat will school you on basic physics and dignity. Even personal hygiene is a negotiation. Toothpaste scents attract more than just fresh breath. The local beetles have opinions, too. Fatigue tests your resolve. The moment you stop paying attention is the moment you brush your hand against a cactus spiked with translucent spines, or reach for a rock only to find it's already been claimed by a centipede as long as your forearm. The trick isn't paranoia, but a kind of respectful vigilance. You learn to appreciate snake tracks as both a warning and a signpost. You're not alone, but you're also not invisible. There are creature encounters that transform from terror into tale. The midnight stare down with a fox, both of you equally startled. The day you unknowingly shared shade with a sleeping horned owl and lived to show off the blurry, photo proof. And, of course, the time you mistook a tarantula's gentle skittering for a rogue sock, causing a tactical retreat worthy of slapstick cinema. In the end, the desert's wild inhabitants become as much a part of your story as the sand and sun. Outsmarting them isn't about outmuscling or outmaneuvering, but about humility, adaptability, and a grudging kind of partnership built on mutual agreement. You don't bother them. They mostly don't bother you. Somewhere between ninja-like agility and a healthy sense of absurdity, you realize that surviving the desert is never a solo act. It's a collaboration with the wind, the creatures, and that ever-present sense that you're only a guest in a landscape far wiser and wilder than you'll ever be. Let me know if you want any tweaks or further customization. When you get sick, there's no pharmacy, just an apothecary with a collection of mysterious powders and the firm belief that goat milk can cure anything except goat-related injuries. If you develop a cough, you can expect to be presented with a hot, suspiciously bitter infusion. Its colour somewhere between on sun-baked clay and old pennies. The apothecary will insist it's made from ancient desert herbs, though which herbs specifically remains ambiguous. You'll sniff dubiously at your cup as your host assures you it's the good stuff. The same blend warriors drank before long journeys. One sip later and your eyes are watering, but any protests are met with cheerfully unwavering conviction. If it tastes terrible, it must be working. For headaches, there's a special paste whose main ingredient appears to be dried scorpion husks, ground so fine that they look like dust swept from a caravan trail, mixed with olive oil and a dash of date syrup to ease the sting. The concoction is smeared boldly onto your temples. Supposedly, it will draw out the heat, though the only immediate effect is a tingling sensation and the lingering suspicion that you've become a snack for local ants. Desert medicine relies equally on ritual as on remedy. A fever isn't simply an ailment, it's a sign you need to realign with the land. The apothecary will wrap you in clean cotton, soaked in water from a deep, cold well, then seat you under an awning to let the breeze weave its way across your forehead. Dates are pressed into your hand, nature's perfect recovery food, or at least the apothecary's idea of a universal cure. You're encouraged to sip more goat milk, which, if nothing else, is refreshingly cold and oddly comforting. Some cures are rooted in observation, like packing wounds with pounded aloe leaves, gently bound in strips of linen. Others feel suspiciously like local folklore, such as the smoky beads from the acacia tree, burned to chase away evil winds. Each whiff of the incense brings knowing nods from the elders. Never mind what your own nose says. This is the wisdom of generations. The heart of the desert medicine cabinet, though, is its improvisational genius. There is always an answer for every ailment, even if it means inventing one on the spot. Sore throat, chew on a stick of saltbush. Sore muscles, camel fat rubbed on your calves, warmed in a clay dish over coals. Nightmares, tuck a red jasper stone under your pillow, preferably one found at the foot of a lightning-struck tamarisk, just to be safe. If your symptoms persist, The apothecary grows more animated. Remedies become proverbs. Pain today is courage tomorrow. A brave heart needs only sun and goat milk. You notice a subtle escalation, from teas to tinctures, from salves to sizzled roots, culminating in one final, elaborate treatment. Perhaps it's a ritual bath in water scented with crushed desert roses, performed at dawn, when even the sand seems to hold its breath. When you emerge, blinking and rejuvenated, you've almost forgotten what ailed you in the first place. Ultimately, the desert medicine cabinet is less about the ingredients and more about the care. Sickness in the desert is met not with urgency, but with community. Neighbours appear with baskets of figs and warm bread, children are dispatched with extra blankets, and someone always has an uplifting story about a time when they survived something much worse. Whatever the remedy, you're never left alone with your illness, and perhaps that, more than any powder or potion, is the true cure. Evenings are for sprawling on rugs, watching the sky turn purple and telling stories, so exaggerated they should come with a warning. Objects in story may be less impressive than they appear. As dusk drops its curtain, the group gathers instinctively, drawn like moths to the flickering campfire glow. Flames crackle and cast shadows that toy with the outline of every face, lending a touch of drama to each participant. Arms are propped on knees, mugs steaming with chai or cocoa, and there's an unspoken agreement. Storytelling is the currency of these nights, and tonight, everyone has something to trade. Someone starts with a tale so audacious it immediately wrests laughter from the group. A fisherman's story, perhaps, about the enormous catfish that nearly pulled me in, which, on closer examination, becomes about as big as your boot. Others try to top it, retelling the time they forgot to tie down a tent, only to find it tumbling across the desert like a giant tumbleweed, or when a midnight snack turned into a midnight skirmish with a band of exceptionally daring raccoons. Each story seems designed not just to entertain, but to gently poke fun at its teller, weaving humility and bravado into the same yarn. There's a rhythm to the swapping of stories. One voice trails off, eyes catching the embers, and another picks up the thread without missing a beat. The tall tales are inevitably punctuated by, "Wait, let me explain," or "No, seriously." Those gathered are seasoned listeners, perfectly attuned to detect every embellishment and, more importantly, keen to outdo the last teller before the stories drift toward the realm of the truly unbelievable. But not every tale is an outright fabrication. Some stories trace the geography of memory. A first camping trip, the disaster of a rain-soaked sleeping bag, the thrill of seeing the Milky Way for the first time unmarred by city lights. These quieter recollections draw the group in closer, swapping laughter for the hush of shared nostalgia. Here, the competitive edge softens. The story of a misread map and an accidental detour becomes a gentle lesson in resourcefulness, gratitude for good company, and the satisfaction of turning mishaps into memories worthy of retelling. The circle grows warmer, emotionally, not just from the fire, as confessions slip out during this nightly unburdening. Someone admits to a secret fear of foxes, sparking a new wave of animal encounter anecdotes. Another reveals their poor sense of direction, the inspiration for the group's running joke about James's famous 5-minute hikes, which invariably last an hour. These inside jokes, minted in the heat of shared adversity and seasoned with friendly ribbing, become the connective tissue holding the group together. All the while, the fire burns lower. Pauses linger a little longer. The stories become softer, edges blurred by fatigue, and the dark's gentle intrusion. The sky, once vibrant with sunset colours, has turned a deep indigo, speckled with stars. In this moment, The group feels both completely isolated from the world and, paradoxically, more connected than they ever do in daylight. If an outsider were to stumble upon the camp at this hour, they might find it difficult to tell fact from fiction, legend from lived experience. But to those curled around the embers, that ambiguity is precisely the point. The campfire transforms everyone, no matter how unremarkable their day has actually been, into a character in their own personal epic. Each exaggeration, each shared laugh is a small rebellion against the ordinariness of daily life, a refusal to let routine dull the edge of adventure. Eventually the tales dwindle, the fire collapses into glowing coals, and silence stretches comfortably among friends. Tomorrow will bring more daylight, new mishaps, and more stories for trading. But for now, in the warm intimacy of campfire camaraderie, everyone is both the hero and the jester of their own tale. A fitting end to another chapter under the stars. Now here is your extended section 18, weaving in these elements and expanding out to 600 words. Once the sun sets, the sand radiates heat back into your bones, and you finally cool off enough to walk around without becoming dehydrated jerky. The stars look close enough to steal. Night in the desert is its own kind of symphony. In the twilight, the fading heat lifts away in rippling waves, making the air quiver with residual energy. Shadows lengthen and thicken until they become the new landscape. And above it all, the sky, no longer the pale, washed-out blue of day, but a vast, consuming velvet, pricked and peppered with more stars than any city dweller could count in 10 lifetimes. Out here, nightlife doesn't come with neon or bass drops, but it pulses nonetheless. Creeping things begin to scuttle, the brushing whir of beetle wings, and the faint, almost polite, clicks of geckos are the first signs that the sand is waking up for its other half. There's the periodic, juicy chirp of a toad, sounding as if he's swallowed the entire dusk. Every movement, yours and theirs, feels amplified. Your footsteps sound loud and impolite at first, crunching the sand that's trying to harden under the rapidly cooling air. After a time, though, you settle in and start to move slow, careful, matching the rhythm of a place wise enough to endure millennia. You catch yourself holding your breath when a tiny owl lands on a half-buried log, fixing you with the unblinking stare of a night watcher. Its silence is so profound, you begin to doubt your own existence. Above, the Milky Way is so clear, it could almost be mistaken for a trick of the atmosphere, like a heat mirage but cold and luminous. Pick out the constellations from memory, or invent new ones. Maybe that's a desert scorpion chasing a band of fleeing mice, or a lone traveler steering his way by starlight. The universe feels newly minted and extravagant, as if perfection was just freshly attempted. If you look to the horizon, you'll see pockets of amber firelight, camps clustered around their little beacons. The low hum of people unwinding drifts through the darkness, laughter bouncing, stories braided into the night, guitar chords soft as wind-blown dunes. Occasionally a song breaks out, something plaintive and raw that lifts into the endless sky. The desert, generosity itself, swallows your secrets and gives nothing back but echoes. Sometimes the animals are braver than the humans. Kit foxes flash silver tails at the periphery, yielding nothing of themselves but a fleeting shadow and the small sound of paws brushing sand. A single coyote howls, the oldest song in the world. Is he calling to the stars above or to another below, hiding just out of your line of sight? Midnight comes, and there's a hush that's electric. All your senses dial up to maximum. A touch to your arm feels twice as warm. A faint aroma of creosote or mesquite floats in and clings. Somewhere, someone brings out a telescope and begins a whispered lecture on galaxies, their voice reverent, hushed in the congregation of the void. You sit back, breath crystallizing in your chest, and let the dessert do what it does best. Show you your own smallness, your capacity for awe, and the simple, perfect luck of being here now, under 1 billion stars. The party never ends, but you learn it isn't always loud. Sometimes, nightlife is found in the hush, the shimmer, the endless invitation of the night sky, one you only hear if you remember to listen. You try to sleep. Every time you get cozy, grit finds its way into your nose. Your bed is a mat, and your blanket is still scratchy. You are not cozy. Someone is snoring. Might be a camel. Above you, stars crowd every inch of the sky, unbothered by your discomfort. Some civilizations would gaze up and see gods, or fate, or philosophy. You see pinpricks that mean you're not in your bedroom. You see the utter indifference of the universe to the nighttime complaints of a tired human, and possibly one exceptionally loud camel. You shift. Something small and sharp crunches under your hip. One last stowaway rock the campfire missed. Sand manages to be everywhere. It's in your socks, your ears, your scalp, and given tonight's ambitions, soon to be in your dreams. You try to imagine a time before you knew the taste and texture of this ancient roaming grit. It doesn't help. Now you're just remembering clean sheets and the sound of a distant dishwasher. The desert, for all of its motionless beauty in the day, comes alive at night. The wind has a habit of whistling secrets through the tent, fluttering the flaps as if inviting in old friends and new mischief. Somewhere, a pot clangs. A muffled curse floats above the tents. Somebody never found their flashlight. You giggle, stifling the sound beneath your scratchy cover. Your tentmate grumbles. You don't need to see to know. They're cocooned, desperate for warmth or peace, or both. You have surrendered to neither. Instead, sleep becomes another negotiation. You give up a little comfort in true bed terms to gain a pinch more warmth. You release the hope of turning over, in exchange for keeping your feet inside the mat's borders. Not that you could get up if you wanted. The logistics of late-night desert movement are complicated. You'd have to unzip yourself from the blanket, unstick yourself from the mat, avoid the tent poles, and not step on anyone's phone or water bottle in the dark. That is, assuming the camel hasn't migrated closer, hoping you'll drop a snack in your sleep. There comes a point, call it a desert rite of passage, where the small indignities of camp life pile so high, they become ballast. Comfy is for another time, another place. Here, you get weirdly philosophical about what matters. Is sleep even the real goal, or just the idea of rest? What if allowing your mind to drift as you listen to rhythmic camel snores is enough? The sound is strangely meditative in the way an idling diesel engine might be, if you'd spent enough time in truck stops. You pull the scratchy blanket tighter around your shoulders. Your breath makes a small, warm cloud that sneaks up and touches your cheek, softening the edge of the desert cold. Now, someone 2 tents down has started singing very quietly, threading old lyrics into the indigo night. Their voice is uncertain, cracking here and there, but it knits the darkness together in an oddly comforting way. There is beauty in these moments, raw and unfinished. You're tired, yes, but you are also witness to something rare. The simple act of being human in a landscape older than memory. You twist, settle. The mat pinches your shoulder blade, but you're too far gone to protest. Above, those countless stars keep watching. You're not sleeping, not yet, but you're drifting somewhere new. A place stitched together by the snores of camels, the shuffle of restless friends, and the infinite hush of a desert night. And just as the first hints of sleep begin to overcome the itch of sand and the rustle of blankets, you realize that pillow talk here means sharing silence with the cosmos and making peace for one night with the grit. The only law that really matters: don't steal someone's water or camel. Desert justice is swift and usually involves a lot of yelling and maybe a chase across the dunes. If this sounds dramatic, that's because it is. In the desert, law and order aren't enforced by a dedicated police force. There's no squad car careening over sand dunes, sirens wailing, though honestly, that would make for a great movie. Instead, there's a code, a centuries-old blend of necessity, mutual respect, and keeping the peace, because it's too hot to stay angry for very long. So what happens if you do something unthinkable, like sneakily borrow your neighbour's goat or mistake someone else's stack of sand for your own? Trust me, you'll never hear the end of it. First, there's the yelling. Desert yelling is an art form, less about volume, more about building drama, pacing yourself, and making sure everyone within a several-kilometre radius knows exactly what you're being accused of. Personal grievances become communal entertainment, and occasionally a teaching moment for any passing children. Then comes the chase. The notion of running after a thief across the dunes is romantic only from a distance. In reality, it's more of a determined shuffle, punctuated by sand in your sandals, and the dawning realization that chasing in 40-degree heat maybe wasn't the wisest decision. Sometimes it's less about actually catching the guilty, and more about preserving the tradition. Got to put on a good show, after all. While we're at it, let's talk sand theft. Yes, it's a thing. Sand, as it turns out, is valuable, especially the kind that's good for building stuff. And if you thought telling one pile of sand from another was difficult, just wait until someone accuses you of illicitly scooping up their premium grain. The confrontation looks like this: two people staring at each other, mysterious piles of sand between them, both convinced they know exactly whose dirt is whose. Cue more yelling. Occasionally, an elder is called in for expert adjudication, which involves ancient wisdom and, most importantly, a lot of slow headshaking. But don't assume there's no real punishment. Sure, you won't find a desert jailhouse with bars and bunks, but social consequences are serious. The worst sentence? Becoming the talk of the nightly fire circle. Every misdeed is retold with increasing embellishment until, by the end of the week, you haven't just taken a sip from someone's canteen. You've absconded with a whole caravan's worth of resources. Your blushes may last longer than any exile ever would. Of course, for truly serious offences, think repeated water theft, chronic camel borrowing, or trying to swindle during trades, exile is the ultimate punishment. Being cast out isn't just inconvenient, it's a matter of survival. Out there, you'd face the elements alone, which, as everyone reminds you, is far worse than being on the receiving end of some angry storytelling. There's also the unique genre of community justice. This is less about law and more about logistics. Someone steals, gets caught, and now has to make it right. Maybe it's an extra day of hauling water or standing watch, or perhaps it's hosting the next communal meal. Think of it as restorative justice, except everyone still brings up your mistake at any opportunity, especially when the fire is low and there's a lull in the conversation. So while the big rules are simple and the punishments improvisational, the real law of the desert is about keeping the peace and knowing everyone's watching. Next time you think about trying some fast sand, remember, word travels faster than you can run, and nothing stays buried for long, especially when it comes to sand theft. If you need further tweaks or want any area expanded even more, let me know. The keffieh isn't just fashion, it's life support. You can use it to block sun, swat bugs, and cover up after eating too many dates. But let's dig a little deeper into the thread count. Out in the harsh landscape, your scarf becomes a Swiss Army knife, without the sharp bits to lose. Imagine you're navigating a sandstorm. Sand in your eyes? No problem. Just wrap the keffiyeh across your face and suddenly you're less exposed tourist and more mysterious desert dweller. Instant upgrade. If anyone asks, yes, you've read the Arabian Nights. And no, you won't be quoting any of it. What about the sun? The scarf keeps the kind of shade dermatologists wish they could bottle. When the temperature spikes and shade is nothing but a rumour, a quick twist of fabric over your neck or head goes a long way. You'll still sweat, but at least you're not cooking. Is it glamorous? Not really. But is it better than looking like a boiled lobster in vacation photos? Absolutely. Then there's the practicality you never expected. Let's say you overestimate your tolerance for Middle Eastern sweets. You lean in for another sticky, glistening date, only to realize your palms are now host to a syrup tragedy. Here comes the keffiyeh. Not for wiping, mind you, but for draping over the evidence. It buys you time. It turns you from sticky-fingered into mysteriously contemplative. Besides, what's a little sugar when you look this composed? Insects, too, have a habit of inviting themselves to the party. A single wrap around your neck or the strategic flutter of your scarf at dusk turns you from walking banquet to something less appetizing. The local flies get the message. You came prepared, but the keffiyeh has social uses as well. In a moment, it can become a picnic blanket for a midday break, or it folds over a borrowed cup of water to filter out mysterious particles. We're not saying what, but you know they're there. When you wave it as a makeshift signal to your lagging companion, who is possibly both lost and distracted by a suspiciously photogenic camel, it's become your flag of survival and, possibly, friendship. There's also a perverse satisfaction in knowing you're pulling off a look. After a few days, the scarf takes on a language of its own. How you tie it says as much about the weather as it does about your mood. You find yourself nodding at other scarf bearers, as if you're in an exclusive club. People who value function, but can't resist a dash of flair. Of course, there are hazards. Choose the wrong pattern, and you might blend in a bit too well during a local protest, or attract attention from that sweet old lady in the souk who insists you're wearing it backwards. At these moments, your scarf transforms, again, this time into a conversation starter or a polite cultural fumble. Embrace the awkwardness. It's part of the uniform. Ultimately, the keffiyeh is less about fashion and more about adaptation. In marshes or markets, deserts or date groves, it endures where sunscreen sweats off and baseball caps sail into the wind. It's a portable shelter, a subtle disguise, and an ongoing concession to the sun, sand, and ordinary mess of being human. So, wrap up. The keffiyeh isn't just for selfies. It's for survival, with a wink. And when you find yourself tying and retying it to suit the moment, know that you're not just clothed, you're equipped, dressed for success, or at least dressed to endure your next adventure, one stylish knot away from safety. Finally, you stumble onto an oasis, sweet, sweet shade, actual palm trees, and water you don't need to filter through your teeth. Everyone becomes a temporary poet in the presence of fresh water. The experience is almost surreal, coming on the heels of endless sand and heat. It's as if the universe has peeled back a curtain to reveal its most well-kept secret. Instinctively, you quicken your pace. The slow, plodding march you'd perfected for miles is forgotten in an instant. Sand burns and thirst vanish from your consciousness, replaced by a sudden burst of hope, matched only by the murmurs of disbelief and laughter rising from the group. Someone is already splashing water on their face. Another is cradling a canteen like a newborn. There is something sacred about this moment. It's where survival transforms into renewal. Oases are rarely as picture-perfect as storybooks suggest. The palm trees might look scraggly, the water could be brackish at first, ringed by suspicious-looking reeds, and the stretch of shade more of a tease than a respite. Yet to your weary senses, all of it is beautiful, reminding you how relative the concept of comfort can be. That shallow pool is, for now, the world's greatest luxury. Physically, you relax for the first time in days, shoulders dropping, breaths deepening. Some people lie down in the sand and stare up through the fronds, not quite believing they've made it. Others busy themselves with practicalities, checking backpacks, setting tarps, beginning to plan for a more comfortable night. There's also an emotional shift. Adversity, strangely, can dull your appreciation for the ordinary, but discovering an oasis reawakens you. The group begins to recount near disasters on the journey, tales that seem almost comical in retrospect. The sandstorm that turned everyone into walking dunes, the endless false horizons promising relief, the boots that wore out 10 miles back. Humour becomes a salve, stitching together frayed nerves. You share what's left of your snacks and invent improbable toasts with sun-warmed water. The oasis is more than water and shade. It's a stage for rediscovering camaraderie and optimism. Oases have a way of sharpening your senses. The scent of greenery, the subtle sounds of birds hidden in the date palms, even the rustle of wind through leaves feels amplified. Some of the group, quiet until now, suddenly find their voice. Spontaneous storytelling erupts. Myths and memories coalesce into a shared oral tradition, patched together with exaggerations and laughter. This pause, this gentle intermission, allows everyone to ease out of the fight or flight instinct. You realize the desert is vast, indifferent, but not entirely merciless. And then, almost as quickly as you arrived, a new awareness sets in. This sanctuary is temporary. The desert remains just beyond the reach of the canopy. The shadows are already shrinking as the sun arcs higher. Water, miraculous as it seems, is finite, and the supplies need rationing. The journey cannot stop here forever. But the time at the oasis is enough to replenish your spirit. You develop a new respect for ancient desert travelers, for whom oases were lifelines, mapped only in stories and stars. With each footstep away from the comforts of the shade, you take that restored hope, along with the last drops in your canteen. In the narrative of desert travel, the oasis is not just a rest stop. It's the pause that makes the struggle meaningful. Its memory is potent, something you carry as you cross the next barren expanse. And you know, having found one, that when the going gets tough again, and it will, you have proof the impossible is possible. The desert, for all its challenges, isn't only a place of hardship. It's a landscape of surprising gifts for those determined to seek them. Getting lost is not an option. You learn to read constellations and shadow lengths. If you mess up, you might just end up in Persia. Out here, there are no road signs, no GPS, no friendly passers-by to point you toward home. It's just you, the horizon, and the sky's ancient, secretive language. Navigation isn't just survival. It's a test of memory, wit, and a keen eye for detail. Every nightfall brings a different map to decipher. A map written in starlight, trackable only to those who bothered paying attention the night before. Daylight navigation starts with the sun. The shadow stick method is your friend. You drive a stick into the ground and mark the tip of its shadow every half hour. With discipline and patience, you'll chart a neat, curved line, west to east, the shortest shadow of the day. That hits due north in the northern hemisphere. The longer you observe, the more you learn to see time and direction traced right onto the earth. But daylight is a luxury. Clear nights are both a challenge and a blessing. The sky, once overwhelming, becomes a familiar friend. The North Star, Polaris, doesn't twinkle or wander. Its solemn, fixed presence above the northern horizon is a silent promise. This way is north, and north means safety. North means home. Ancient travellers, from Vikings to Nabatean traders, placed their faith in Polaris more than any compass. Reading constellations is a matter of pattern recognition and storytelling. The sky isn't just a mass of dots. Orion strides boldly across winter's darkness, his belt a ruler by which to gauge the sky. Find Orion's belt and trace a line down. To the left sits Sirius, the dog star, brightest of all, a countdown marker for dawn. It's more than a static sky. Night by night, seasons slide past as constellations rise earlier or vanish below the horizon. In summer, the arc of Cassiopeia signals north, her W shape unmistakable even to the weary-eyed, the wayward, the lost. Facing her, you sense dusk's direction. The Milky Way, splashed from horizon to horizon, points a rough north to south line. These star road marks won't let you wander too far astray. But it's not all recognition games. Weather betrays the best plans. Cloud cover can erase your map in a blink. You learn to use touchstones, landmarks under the sun, the curve of a hillside, the lean of a tree hounded by the prevailing wind. Shadows, at different times, help trace the passage of time as well as direction. Short and sharp at noon, smeared and long toward evening or morning. Each shift in light means another reminder not to get lax. For centuries, navigation wasn't just a skill. It was the distinction between hero and ghost story. Folklore abounds with foolhardy souls, crossing deserts or oceans on a whim, never to return, remembered as cautionary tales. So you pay attention and keep your mind sharp. Trusting the sky is how you become part of a lineage of Bedouins, wayfinders, sailors, and survivors. Each pushing on beneath the impossible scale of the universe, relying on little more than good eyes and grit. But perhaps the most important lesson learned is humility. The sun and stars are impartial guides, indifferent to your bravado or your fear. They're dependable only if you show up ready to look, ready to memorize, ready to adapt when the world below is shifting. Navigation by the heavens is not infallible, but it is honest. It demands respect and rewards diligence. Step outside at dawn or dusk, gaze up and take your bearings. You'll never regret knowing where you are, or, maybe more importantly, where you're headed. The desert is quieter than any office on a Friday at 4 p.m. At night, the only sounds are wind, distant animal calls, and the collective sighs of people hoping for rain. But to mistake the desert for silent is to miss its subtle music entirely. During the day, the hush is a canvas on which sound paints in brief, vivid strokes. A fat black bird, usually a raven, cuts the air with a throaty croak, echoing against rocks. The sound seems out of proportion to the bird's size, like a prank on the ear. In midday heat, after the raven's cry, there may be nothing, only the static hum in your own head and the distant buzz of air through dry grass. Sometimes that's it for an hour. If you slow down and let yourself tune in, you'll find the desert soundtrack is more than the sum of what's obvious. In the pre-dawn, there's the faint shuffling of kangaroo rats, foraging under the safe cover of darkness. Creosote bushes occasionally tremble, not from wind, but from lizards darting between their roots. The rare drip of dew from a rock ledge sounds loud enough to startle. Low in the sand, insects sing at frequencies just beyond comfortable human hearing. A constant background whir that, once noticed, seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. Then there are the dramatic passages, monsoon thunderstorms, which arrive like an abrupt mood change in a symphony. The air crackles with electricity, the wind howls, and fat raindrops slap the parched dirt in a staccato rhythm. Thunder booms, echoing back and forth between canyon walls like applause in a stadium of stone. Even if the clouds only deliver a few minutes of rain, the aftermath is noisy. Frogs rise from apparent extinction, bellowing at the rare pools their ancestors have waited for in silence. At dusk, the temperature drops and new players emerge. Coyotes howl in the middle distance, their voices rising in that classic yip yip yeeul chorus, the closest thing the desert has to a love song, though it is frankly more chilling than romantic. Grasshoppers and cicadas take over the night shift, producing a whir and click that can seem hypnotic or maddening, depending on your mood and how much sleep you've had. Human sounds are inevitably part of the desert's score. The scratch of boots on gravel, the soft clink of a water bottle, the closing zipper of a tent. Each is momentarily louder than anything natural. But most people, recognizing the precious rarity of true quiet, quickly learn to move carefully, to talk in hushed tones, to let silence dominate. Occasionally wind will whip up a temporary cacophony, rattling ocotillo spines and slamming loose sheets of metal on abandoned shacks. But just as quickly, a deep stillness returns, making you wonder if you imagined the racket at all. Ultimately, the magic of the desert soundscape is in its contrast. There are moments of near-complete silence, a kind of auditory negative space, punctuated by isolated, deliberate sounds. In the bustle of modern life, such clear intervals are rare, almost shocking. Here, silence itself becomes a presence, heavy and full, a participant in the story, rather than an absence. Maybe that's why so many who spend time here speak of the desert's music, with reverence and nostalgia. To live in the desert is to become attuned to a slower, quieter rhythm. The soundtrack is subtle, but once you hear it, you realize it's a symphony you want playing in the background of your mind, long after you've left the sand and wind behind. As dawn breaks and the sand starts to warm, you realize you lived to see another day. Your hair is 2 shades lighter from sun. Your complaints are 2 shades louder from sand. The fire, now just a lazy smoke, tickles its way skyward, while the desert's shadows retreat under an army of golden light. You emerge from your sleep, not quite rested, but oddly proud. You survived another Arabian night. There's grit in your teeth and a feeling, part accomplishment, part genuine dirt, that you've become part of the landscape. All around you, the world is painted in pale oranges and pinks, dunes glowing, as if the night's darkness was only a rumour. You stretch your arms skyward, feeling the ache of too little padding under your bedroll and too much sand everywhere else. Every muscle protests, but your spirit feels seasoned, like a well-worn shoe. Outside, small clusters of people stir. A family stokes the fire for morning tea. Someone lets out a tired groan, and camels, those ever-skeptical ships of the desert, regard you with judgmental eyes as they begin their slow chewing. Breakfast is less a feast and more a ritual. You're handed a round of hard bread, warm from the coals, and the sharp scent of cardamom drifts from a communal pot. There's no rush. After all, the desert isn't going anywhere. But you eat quickly, aware that the sun will soon turn gentle warmth into blistering heat. Life in medieval Arabia revolved around these small, essential victories, surviving the chill, making it through the heat, finding shade under a canvas tent. Even laughter here is a kind of resilience, a gentle ribbing about who snored loudest, or who complained the most about sand. I swear, it's in my eyebrows. On rough days, You imagine those little jokes are as vital as water. Maybe more so. You pack, slapping sand out of everything and surrendering to the fact that some will travel with you for days. As camels are loaded and everyone prepares for the next leg of the journey, you pause a moment to breathe in the morning. Cool, sharp, and promising. There's a rhythm to this life, as if every sunrise hits reset on the hardships of the day before. Yet, as you look at the determined faces around you, traders, herders, nomads, dreamers, you realize survival in this place takes more than stubbornness. It requires adaptability and community, a quick wit, and an acceptance that nothing, not even the sand, can be completely tamed. Maybe that's why humor feels so at home here. It's a shield against monotony and the grinding endlessness of the landscape. The journey continues, but the morning brings perspective. Yesterday's worries fade under the new sun. The hardships haven't disappeared, but you know now they can be met, sometimes even with a joke or a shared glance over tea. Every sunrise in the desert is a small victory, a reminder that the world resets every day, and so do we. Perhaps, as you carry onward, you wonder if the desert shapes its travelers more deeply than softer places ever could. Here, a night's survival is cause for pride, a new dawn, a gift, laughter, a survival skill. You walk away a little lighter, a day closer to home, or to somewhere else entirely, with new stories already collecting in your head. And so, as you drift off tonight, picture yourself wrapped in scratchy blankets, listening to the endless hush of sand shifting outside your tent. You made it through a day in medieval Arabia, not with air conditioning, Wi-Fi, or a cold drink, but with ingenuity, a sturdy scarf, and more sand than anyone deserves. It's kind of comforting to know your ancestors survived all this, especially when your biggest crisis today was forgetting your reusable water bottle. So maybe, as you tuck yourself into nice, sand-free sheets, you can quietly thank the people who blazed these trails across endless dunes. They found purpose, love, and even humor in a place that literally wants to dry you out. History's a little ridiculous, very stubborn, and sometimes unexpectedly beautiful. Sleep well, and dream of cool oases, starry skies, and finding only a little sand in your pajamas. Good night. And so, as you drift off tonight, picture yourself wrapped in scratchy blankets, listening to the endless hush of sand shifting outside your tent. You made it through a day in medieval Arabia, not with air conditioning, Wi-Fi, or a cold drink, but with ingenuity, a sturdy scarf, and more sand than anyone deserves. It's kind of comforting to know your ancestors survived all this, especially when your biggest crisis today was forgetting your reusable water bottle. So maybe, as you tuck yourself into nice, sand-free sheets, you can quietly thank the people who blazed these trails across endless dunes. They found purpose, love, and even humor in a place that literally wants to dry you out. History's a little ridiculous, very stubborn, and sometimes unexpectedly beautiful. Sleep well and dream of cool oases, starry skies, and finding only a little sand in your pajamas. Good night.